The 90-mile drive home seemed like an eternity. I desperately needed to tell Richard what had happened, but I was not ready to share it with my sons. In shock, I rode in silence, gazing at the countryside out the windows as the children chattered in the back seat. I wondered how my life could have been so wonderful that morning and so intensely painful now. I believed that my mother told me the truth so that I would feel grateful enough to stop my campaign to prevent her marriage to George. I thought about my childhood, how my mother had taught me to be afraid of kidnappers and never to talk to strangers or get into anyone's car. Crying some of the time, I reminisced about what a wonderful mother she was to me and what a great grandmother she was to my sons. Finally, we reached home. The boys went off to play with friends, and Richard and I were finally alone. Desperately sad, I broke down, crying as I told Richard what my mother had said. As I formed her story into words of my own, I felt as though I were talking about somebody else, a stranger or a character in a story, as if it were a fantasy or a crazy bad dream, as if I were saying something that somehow wasn't true. God, why me? I thought. Richard put his arms around me and held me tight, and then he pulled back to look at my face, streaked with tears. I don't care where you came from, he said. I will always love you, no matter what. Since our sons were playing at their friends' houses, Richard and I used the opportunity to go to the Minneapolis library to see if anything had been in the newspapers. We accessed the microfilm of 3 newspapers from August and September of 1936 and saw 6 weeks of headlines about the General Hospital baby kidnapping. I read quickly. The banner headlines described young Margaret as immoral and hard-boiled, a scandalous 15-year-old girl mother and a delinquent who had apparently conspired with Mike, who might have been my father, to murder me. My shameful roots in alcoholism, promiscuity, and attempted infanticide were laid bare in the headlines of all of the Minneapolis newspapers for nearly 2 months. Horrified that such a person was my birth mother, I felt ashamed of my real heritage, and to my dismay, no matter how much I searched the newspaper coverage, nowhere did I find Mike's last name. Reading the newspaper accounts sickened me. I was so sick to my stomach as we left the library, heading home before our sons were due back. In shock, I could hardly talk. I couldn't believe that I had a mother who was a sexy, materialistic delinquent who could actually send off her newborn baby to certain death. Until that day, I had spent 31 years thinking that I was one person, Lorene Hermanson, only to find out that I was not. I was Shirley Ann Bolin. I was not Scandinavian, not Norwegian, but Irish. I was not the daughter of disciplined, strict parents who worked hard all their lives, but the child of an immoral and promiscuous alcoholic. I was not the daughter of upstanding parents who were devoted to their deep and rich Lutheran church life, but the child of a girl who had turned her back on her Catholic background. I was not cherished by a mother who had an all-encompassing love for me, but was discarded by a mother who saw me as nothing more than a problem to be disposed of, a piece of trash. My mother and father, Ailie and Inga Hermanson, gave me a wholesome upbringing in an idyllic childhood in a large, close-knit and church-centered family. Throughout my life, they had taught me to attend church every Sunday and to live my life according to the proper standards of female behavior. No drinking, no smoking, and no swearing. But my birth mother had indulged in everything that I was raised to reject. She certainly lived in a different world from mine, and I shuddered to think of what would have become of me if she had raised me. I began to wonder about her. What had happened to Margaret Bolin? Had she changed? Did she really only care about money and appearance, or had she grown into a woman with more heart and depth? I wondered, too, whether Mike was really my father. Was he also the father of the Willow River baby? Who was that poor soul? Did Mike kill that baby? How close did I come to meeting the same fate? I knew that I needed answers, needed to know the truth about my real parents. No matter what, I would learn the truth about my parents, my birth, my intended murder, and the other baby who met the fate that I had been spared.